Resources and environment, meaning nature and component of resources. Dear students, in this episode, we are going to discuss on the resources and environment. This episode consists of the following modules: 1. Meaning of resources, 2. Definition of resources, 3. Nature of resources, 4. Component of resources, 5. Nature and culture. Meaning of resources. Resources in general are defined as features which are useful and needed by man. It can also be defined as anything from living and non-living environment to satisfy the human needs and wants. It is also referred to a function which a thing or a substance performs, or to an operation in which it may take part. Following are some of the definitions of resources. A resource is any physical or virtual entity of limited availability or anything used to help on earn a living. Any natural or human wealth that can be used for satisfying human needs. Available resources of wealth, a new or reserve supply that can be drawn upon when needed. Something that is valuable in its relatively natural form. A concentration of naturally occurring solid, liquid or gaseous materials in or on the earth crust. Properties and opportunities which are used in the process of producing goods. Something that one uses to achieve an objective, example, raw materials or personnel. A person's capacity to deal with difficulty. Resources are the factors of production that are normally derived from the natural environment and are used to produce goods and services. Land and capital are generally referred to as physical resources and labor as human resources. Let us discuss some more definitions of resources. Typical dictionary meaning of definitions of the resources read as follows. A. That upon which one relies or aid, support or supply. B. Means to attain given ends. C. The capacity to take advantage of opportunities to extricate oneself from difficulties. Evidently, resources presupposes a person. They are an expression or reflection of human appraisal. The appraisal finds that something can serve as means to given ends, that one can rely on it for aid, support or supply. The third definition reveals that resources do not necessarily exist outside the appraiser but can be logged within him. Evidently, there are subjective or internal resources as well as objective or external resources. Subjective resources furthermore play a dual role, a positive one taking advantage of opportunity and a negative one of extricating the individual from difficulties or of overcoming obstacles or resistance. Etymologically, the word resource is related to source. The prefix re meaning again suggests dependability through time as indicated in the word rely used in the first dictionary definition. According to Spencer and Thomas, a natural resource is any product, thing or circumstance which can be valued when its production, processing and use are understood. According to Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, Volume number 12, resources are those aspects of man's environment which render possible or facilitate the satisfaction of human wants and attainment of social objectives. Now let us discuss about the nature of resources. The outstanding nature of resources are identified and they are as follows. Resources are dynamic. Resources are dynamic and it's not only in response to increased knowledge, improved arts, expanding science, but also in response to changing individual wants and social objectives. Resources were defined as means of attaining given ends, that is individual wants and social objectives. This preoccupation with single tangible phenomena in nature creates the false impression of resources as something static, fixed, whereas actually they are as dynamic as civilization itself. Natural resources are commonly thought to include minerals, forest, fisheries, land with potential for agriculture, rivers and streams with irrigation or hydroelectric power, potential rainfall and air. Now, resources are pre-existing endowment. Natural resources have been considered by many to be a free existing endowment that is available for human exploitation. With the exception of items such as rainfall and air, however, it can be argued that none of the above listed categories of resources exist without the intermediation of technology. In this view, these resources are physically free existing, but the resource characters derived from the ability of humans to find a use for them. That ability is a function of the development of science and technology. Resources are created by technology. Consequently, all resources could be considered not natural, created by technology, and not fixed, expanding and growing with the ideas and knowledge that are used to transform the environment and make it habitable for humans. Without technology, there would be few resources and a human would be another primate limited to small bands and inhabiting a very restricted tropical habitat. Resources are power and wealth. Resources are the basis of both security and opulences. They are the foundation of power and wealth. They affect man's destiny in war and peace. The unequal distribution of resources on the earth has in the history of mankind led to wars of conquest, colonization and purchase of vast undeveloped holdings by other countries. Resources give economic power and strength to a region. Now, let us discuss about the components of resources. The economy of any country is resource based. Man has used his technical skills and knowledge in utilizing the natural resources in one way or the other. Resources are anything from living and non-living environment to satisfy the human needs and wants. These needs are fulfilled by the earth, which consists of lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere and biosphere. These different spheres are supporting biosphere, which consists of all living and non-living organisms. Following are the important components of the resources. The biosphere. The biosphere is the layer around our planet in which all living organisms exist. It contains all the different ecosystems and all the water, minerals, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus and other nutrients that living things in order to survive. The biosphere has been called the skin of life it extends only a few kilometers above and below sea level and only few meters into the soil. Everything in the biosphere is basically composed of three components, namely organic components that includes plant, animals and microorganisms, inorganic or abiotic components that includes physical environment, land, water, and third energy components that include solar and geothermal energy. And these three components are mutually interdependent and are interrelated through a series of large scale cyclic mechanisms which make the input-output mechanism. All the millions of different species of plants and animals exist within the biosphere in an orderly and precise fashion. Each part of the biosphere contains particular combinations of climate and soil. These areas provide life support conditions for groups of species that have adapted to those environments. Energy is the driving force behind all life on the biosphere. The sun provides 99.99% of all the radiant energy required for life on the earth. The remaining 0.01% comes from the heat contained within the planet. Lithosphere is an important component of the biosphere. The lithosphere components consists of elements, minerals, rocks, landforms, and it accounts 29% of the total surface area of the globe. The atmosphere. The atmosphere is a blanket of air which comprises different gases, water vapor, dust particles. It surrounds the earth like a cellular blanket, regulating the temperature by allowing the sun's rays to enter and by letting waste heat back into space. The temperature, pressure, wind, clouds, rainfall and different types of humidity is experienced here. It consists of 21% of the oxygen, which is life-giving layer to all living organisms. The atmosphere helps to purify water by recycling it in the hydrological cycle and also provides carbon dioxide for plant photosynthesis and oxygen for respiration in both plants and animals. Plants provide food for animals as well as releasing oxygen for man to breathe. There are many different climates around the world from Arctic to tropical. Climate has crucial effect on the kinds of vegetation found in a particular region. Its moisture content, temperature and movement in the great mass known as atmosphere constitute what is called climate, and this makes it important in determining the character of the soil and land in its spatial sense and how it may be used. It is therefore an important component of natural resource which affects profoundly other natural resources. The soil. The basic necessity of mankind is food, shelter and clothing is fulfilled by soils. Soils are indispensable to life. The relationship between soil and agriculture, soil and growth of forest are also indispensable. The soil is in fact the very heart of the life layer known as biosphere because it represents a zone wherein plant nutrients are produced, held, maintained and are made available to plants through their roots and to the microorganisms which live in the soil. The soil is considered to be a great biological factory because number one, the soil layer functions as a medium for the transfer paths of energy and matter and helps in the biological cycling of nutrients. Second, a great varieties of organic compounds are generated in the soil layer. Third, the soil layer provides home and ideal environmental conditions for living organisms of several varieties and numerous species. This is the soil layer where organic materials derived from plants and animals. The soil layer holds water in storage which is used by plants and animals. The water is very important component of the abiotic or physical components because it is very essential element for all types of life in the biosphere. Water plays very important role in the circulation of nutrients in the various components of the ecosystems. The water components consists of 1. The surface water, 2. the groundwater, 3. oceanic water. The sources of surface water is precipitation, melting of ice, springs and seepages. The groundwater is also called as subsurface water, underground water. The oceanic water or hydrosphere covers 71% of the total surface area of the globe. The total surface area of the globe is about 510 million square kilometer, out of which hydrosphere accounts 361 million square kilometer. The another important resources is plants and animals. On a functional basis, the biotic or organic components of biosphere ecosystems are divided into two broad divisions. Example, autotrophic components which represents plants, heterotrophic components, those includes animals. Social groupings of plant species are called plant community and plants are basic unit of the community. Plants are found on any land in different forms. Example, woodland, forest, meadows, grasslands, marshlands, etc. These different forms of plants are collectively known as vegetation. Plants are primary producer because they produce their food themselves through the process of photosynthesis. Thus, plants are also called autotrophs. The main function of the animals are to use organic matter made available by the green plants. Microorganisms. Microorganisms are also known as decomposers because these decomposes the dead plant and animals and other organic matter in different forms. During the process of decomposition of organic matter, microorganisms obtain their food as well as they differentiate and separate complex organic matters and thus make them simple so that this may be again used by green plants. Example, microbacteria and fungi. Human resources. Human resources are the important component of the resources. Wesley C. Michel was absolutely correct when he wrote, incomparably greatest among human resources is knowledge. It is greatest because it is the mother of other resources. Freedom and wisdom, the fruits of knowledge, are the fountainhead of resources. Seen in this light, the concept of resources is purely functional, inseparable from human wants and human capabilities. But its resources change with each change in human civilization. Nature and culture. So long as the human race continues to climb upward to higher culture levels, culture is bound to become increasingly important as the dynamic force in the creation of resources. This shift of emphasis towards the culture by no means implies a disparagement of nature's role and a disregard of physical realities. Physical reality at times is the basis on which human culture rests. The physical environment, appraised both quantitatively and qualitatively and viewed as changing relationship of trends in force rather than as static conditions. Nature sets the limits within which man can develop his arts to satisfy his wants. Culture thus involves a twofold process of change. On the one hand, it comprises the sum total of the culture modification of the non-man environments, physical and non-physical. On the other hand, it comprises cultural changes affecting human attitudes, human relationship within groups as well as between groups. Government, religious centers, trade union, trade association, standards of living, creeds, etc. are all cultural products of the resources. Let me recapitulate the episode as the natural resources in the form of matter and energy are of vital significance for the successful survival of all types of life on the planet Earth. All aspects of human society, which includes social, cultural, political and economic, are fulfilled by the resources. Therefore, the meaning, nature, classification, assessment and evaluation, uses and abuses, conservation and management of all sorts of resources, natural or culture, renewable or non-renewable, are very significant. The resources are fundamental base for economic growth and development of human society, but their withdrawal from the nature, mode of their uses by human beings and their disposal has enormous adverse effect on the environment. The resource is purely functional, inseparable from human wants and human capabilities. Resources are essential in the high standard of living which man is enjoying today. In the next episode, we shall discuss about the meaning, nature and components of environment.